Hello, beer troopers, and welcome to yet another beer review with me, Peter, the master of hobbits. Today, trying a classic American beer, but brewed in Europe. So I can't remember the last time I had a beer from Lagunitas. It's been quite some time, but as you might know, quite a few years back, Lagunitas was bought up by Heineken, and because of that, we are now seeing Lagunitas as draft beers all over. It's crazy. European brewed Lagunitas. So we're revisiting Lagunitas IPA today, but it's not technically the same beer because it's brewed in Europe under license. So I was a massive fan of Lagunitas. First and foremost, their beers were pretty fresh by standards back in the day when they came to Europe, and they were freaking cheap. It was some of the cheapest American beer you could get. I think the big bombers were like 50 crowns when they were over here, 60, which is like such bang for your buck. And I loved Hop Stupid, and I loved Maximus IPA. And then I so wanted to try the Lagunitas Sucks IPA, but it took a while until I got to try it because it took a while for that beer to come over. But otherwise, I've done like the Censored Ale and the Little Something Something Ale and yeah, load of the classics. Which one else? There's a Brown Sugar as well. But there's the Waldo thing, which is the triple IPA. Never tried that one. They had for a while a Willet Barrel Aged Stout that was also in Europe, but that was the American brewed one. I can't remember what that one was called. But that one is, I remember a lot of people talking about Sleeper Beer, Bourbon County, Rival, blah, 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 stuff like that. I think I tried it in shares, but I never did a review. But we're trying Lagunitas brewed at Alken-Maes I think that is in Belgium. Yeah. So it says here it's brewed at the Alken-Maes Brewery in Belgium under the supervision of Lagunitas in California. And that's due to the agreement with Heineken. So what's interesting is that Alken-Maes is co-owned because it was owned by Newcastle. So Newcastle owned Alken-Maes, and Newcastle, what part of Newcastle's portfolio was bought by Carlsberg, part of it bought by Heineken. So Alken-Maes has an interesting split because part of it is Carlsberg-owned brands, part of it is Heineken-owned brands. And I think an example could be something like Grimbergen beers. Outside of Belgium, everything is from Carlsberg. In Belgium, it's Heineken, brewed at Alken-Maes, and then otherwise at Carlsberg's facilities. So I'm wondering how this one, since it's in Belgium, I'm guessing it's because it's a Heineken brand because it was bought independently, and then they have a deal to brew it at their facility. Also because when I've seen it on tap in Denmark, it's been served at places that serve Heineken and Royal Unibrew beers. And in Denmark, Royal Unibrew has the license to do sales of Heineken products and also I think they actually brew Heineken now as well under license, where they had a very long process of fine-tuning a recipe so it would taste identical to Heineken. But it'd be funny to try and battle like Danish brewed Heineken actually versus the Dutch brewed one, although it's one of my least favorite beers. But see, what's also awesome about this beer, I was a bit harsh on it back in the day. The beer even looked different in the glass in my old video 14 years ago. I think it was maybe slightly oxidized because it was just not as vibrant. I was a bit like, eh. I also graded it a lot lower back then than I do these days because my idea of the rating scale was that like usually in the 70s range was really good beers. And then like I never got around the 90s because I looked at the scale as kind of like the Danish school system where you have a lot of passing grades and only 2 failing grades. Whereas now I rate more exponentially, where 50 is, the minimum to pass, and that's kind of how you would do it as a beer judge as well. So if you go to competitions and stuff, if a beer needs at least 50 to pass. So this is a legendary IPA, as they say. They use a little touch of caramel malt, and the hops are Cascade, Centennial, Chinook, and a splash of Simcoe. So some old C hops and then Simcoe in there. And they've got a lot of info. 6.2% ABV, 51 IBUs, so not the most bitter West Coast of the more old ones. And then they've even got the OG and everything, so you can try and they've got notes here, C hops. So the use of old school C hops brings touches of citrus flavor, both bright and deep flavors, pine aromas as well from the hops, citrus and caramel notes too, which is interesting. Oh, that's the pine is to balance it out. There we go. And the caramel malts. IPA is chock full of caramel malted barley that brings a special depth of flavor to the beer. While as other malts bring biscuity flavors, this brings taste of caramel sugar as well as beautiful blood orange hue. So I'm not always a big fan of the crystal malt in the IPA in the West Coast IPAs. But as long as the beer is fresh, it can be okay. 12-ounce bottle, 19.2-ounce cans, 12-ounce cans, and on draft. And this is the European 12-ounce. So let's check this one out. Pours more of a golden orange hue. I can see the lights are getting dimmer and dimmer because I usually get to shoot this when the kids are in bed. So it's getting a little bit darker. I need the light for the next video. But yeah, it looks very orange on camera, but in real life, it's like lightly golden orange. Either they tweaked the recipe a bit, or it's just because my original bottle was really old. This is from April. That's one of the benefits with this being brewed in Europe, the end of April. So only, not even 3 months yet. This is quite impressive. And this was bought in Sweden at Systembolaget. So I wonder if the Danish, if you can get it in Denmark and that's brewed in Denmark. I mean, I've seen it on drafts. I haven't seen it in cans. It might be, I'm not sure. But yeah, it looks nice. It's got a white head. Let's check out the aroma on this. Very classic, generic IPA aroma to me. I'm not sure if this is because macro brewers are involved producing this compared to the American counterpart, but it's very mild. It's got a weird bubblegum note. Bubblegummy, tutti fruity, orange for sure, pine a little bit, but it's like not that interesting smelling. It smells very subdued. It smells almost a bit like drinking other supermarket IPAs from these bigger breweries. And then there's a touch of that caramel note, almost like slightly marmalade-y. And breadiness too. Let's try it. Cheers. I mean, this used to be a beer I really enjoyed. Let's see how it is brewed by macro brewers in Europe. Not half bad, but it lacks a bit of flavor. Like, the main thing that's going on for this is bitterness. Yeah, like this just feels a bit like macro boys stepping in and they're like, let's take out a little bit of hops there and a little bit of hops there. And like, this is the same experience I had back, that's 14 years ago, man. I couldn't remember that experience. Only because I rewatched a little bit of the video, but like, it feels a little bit timid on the palate. Like, it's slightly grapefruity, citric piney, tutti fruitiness is a little bit there, not as much as the aroma. Crystal malt, not a lot, it's just light. Otherwise, it's fairly crisp and dry, piney, bitter. I mean, if this is available at like a concert, like I'm going to Pantera, and I recently went to Metallica, and I'm going to Pantera next year, and that's going to be a Royal Unibrew venue. If they serve this, I wouldn't mind drinking this because this would be a better choice than everything else they had on tap. But it just also feels a lot like a lot of these macro, like if you drink the Carlsberg brewed Brooklyn beers, it's similar to that. If you drink the Carlsberg IPAs, like Yakima stuff, similar to that. It's very similar to the Anarchist beers from Royal Unibrew as well. These are just like Danish examples. It's very similar to like supermarket brand beers. It's clean, almost clinical, and then it's got some hop notes, like some hop flavor, but it's light and subdued. It's a relatively fresh can. Like, I just remember Lagunitas beer as being a bit more poof and having more vibrance and sing compared to this, where this feels just kind of dumbed down. The biggest thing it's got going for it is bitterness and then some of the citrus and pine. It definitely feels like there's been some interference, but I can't be 100% sure. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who love this, old money people and whatnot, that still enjoy drinking it and will rate it higher than I am going to. But if you compare this to drinking fresh West Coast IPAs on the West Coast, if you go there, like even if you grab a can of imported Swamis from Pizza Port, it will slay this, like utterly slay it. I think like even like a Stone IPA, like imported a couple months ago, will slay this. Even Torpedo will slay this. It just feels so much more dumbed down, and it's a goddamn shame. Like, this is one of the things that can happen when breweries sell out. And I think a lot of beers have gone this way. But I think there's still a big fan base for Lagunitas in the States. And I've heard from some people that some of it is still pretty good. At least the stuff that's brewed at the, is it Petaluma? Yeah, Petaluma facility. If it's still around, I'm not sure. There was just a very long time where people are still very big fans of Lagunitas beers, but this is a fine beer. There's nothing wrong with it. It just feels a bit macro and feels dumbed down. Like it feels more like an IPA, West Coast IPA for the everyman than it does, feel like a West Coast IPA for the beer lover or the beer geek even. Like it just feels like exactly like any of other beers that are brewed under these licenses and portfolios, like Grimbergen and all this, like these just macro interpretations of what they really are, which are what they really are is just 10 times better. It's 1,000-fold better. And I'm pretty fucking disappointed in this. I compared it to Bear Republic Racer 5 back in the day because that's the beer I recently had. I gave it a 75. Back in the day, it's hard to say because I don't exactly remember it, but like most of the other Lagunitas beers, I gave it a 90, and I'd probably be around the 90 to 92.3 range if I just somewhat can think back on most of the beers. But I think I'm gonna score this the same because it's not a bad beer. It's just dumbed down in macro. Maybe a 70, just a little bit lower, 70 to 75, something like that. It's not a bad beer. I'd give it like a 3.25, 3.5 or something like that on Untappd. It's just like, it feels really dumbed down and it feels like it's just brewed for a much, much bigger audience where they want IPA-like flavor in a beer, and more so than it feels like a proper West Coast IPA. The bitterness is the only thing proper West Coast about this. So yeah, a bit of a shame, but that's it. That's how it is. I've had quite a few. I brought quite a few Swedish Systembolaget IPAs over here to share with the family, and it's very similar to that. Like New York Carnegie beers, Brooklyn beers. That was a few like just supermarket IPAs that is made by larger breweries. It's just exactly similar to stuff like that, which is just a little bit boring, which is a shame. Like I bought bottles of Radeberger Pilsner from Germany there as well. I'd rather drink that than this. And that's from a big producer in Germany. So that's saying a lot. But yeah, if you guys had a chance to try the European version of Lagunitas IPA, let me know what you think. And also, if you've tried the American one in recent times, I'd love to hear how it is, if it seems dumbed down like this one. But let me know. And as always, remember to comment, subscribe, check out the Facebook fan page and Twitter and Instagram, give the video a thumbs up, enjoy, and ring the bell for future notifications about videos. And I'm going to say cheers and some rather disappointing West Coast IPA. And see you guys in another beer review.